tell my sons that when it comes to like creativity and art and stuff like that, it's like you cannot let business people dictate like the things that you make when you are the creator of the art or whatever, because if you do, then the original idea of what it is never going to be able to come to fruition, because there's always going to be boundaries around it of things that you're not allowed to do or whatever, you know. So in exploiting that, once we had that freedom like that, that's what I mean about that's what enabled being able to make albums like Supernova, Willpower, Temple of the Morning Star, In the Eyes of God, all those things, is because I had it straight with everybody. Hey, if you like me, then trust me, I'm going to make the very best thing that I can make.
This is Tom for Ghost Cult, and it is an honor to be joined by one of my personal heroes, Steve Austin, who is the long-standing frontman of a band that I consider to be one of the most vital and creative bands of my generation, Today is the Day, who will be releasing their latest album, Never Give In, on Steve's own SuperNova Records on October the 3rd. Steve, thank you very much for joining us.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for having me, man. We really appreciate you and Ghost Cult, and I'm psyched to hang out with you, buddy.
Awesome. No, I'm really excited to get the opportunity to pick your brain about the latest record and the band in general, because yeah, as I say, I'm a huge Today is the Day fan. Your music has inspired and enriched my life for years. So yeah, it's really cool to get to hang out. Before we get into talking about the latest record, I want to say condolences for the loss of your former bandmate Mike Harrell. I think that the music that you made together, those first two Today is the Day records, are, you know, a testament to what a great musician he was.
Yeah. No, Mike was incredible. I've said it before, and maybe it's because he played music with me and I'm biased or whatever, but back in the day of those records, you know, I feel David Sims from Jesus Lizard was pretty much the one to beat if you were a bass player. And I love David Sims. I consider him one of the best in the world, but I always felt like that Mike was in the noise rock movement the best of anybody. And you know, I knew him since he was 17 years old when he came to the band and so forth. And you know, he went out to dinners at my parents' house like on every Sunday and stuff like that. I'd take him out there with me. Mike was up in Nashville without any family or anything, so we always tried to include him into family things like eating dinner together and things. And he was there the day that we actually went to one of those Sunday dinners, and I found out that my dad died. And so he was there at the moment of me finding out about that. And yeah, you know, there's a lot of fond memories from back in those days of the first two albums of three punk, noise, metal, experimental kids coming from nowhere that suddenly got to go travel and see places that we would have never dreamed of being able to go to together and experience it all. And I was absolutely shocked and devastated when I found out of Mike's passing, you know.
Totally understandable. Thinking about those times when it was the two of you with Brad Elrod on drums, that original trio that you had, like I've only had the chance to sort of see clips of you playing live. And it looks like, I can imagine you had these incredibly intense performances, because I kind of think Today is the Day has always been a really intense project. What do you sort of remember about the energy between the three of you on stage and the sort of reception that you got early on before people really knew who you were?
You know, the really beautiful thing about those early days of playing together was there was a really deep commitment between the three of us about the music. And that commitment extended to a discipline of going to practice sometimes 7 days a week, at a minimum like 5, 6 days a week. And these practices were long. Like we would get together when we would all get off work at around about 5:30, and we would go from like 6 till midnight regularly, like Monday through Fridays, Monday through Saturday, and like I said, sometimes just 7 days a week because the music was all we had, and we cared about it. Each person deeply cared about it immensely, and about being able to do the music justice. And so when we would go do these shows, the early shows and whatnot, the band was extremely prepared, to the point that I remember Tom from Guzzard saying to me the first time that we played with them on Clusterfuck tour, uh, which was our first tour. You guys must practice a lot because because it was an obsessive thing about really trying to do something special for the people that cared about the music, and working on it so many hours and so many minutes. But because we did do stuff like that, the shows were able to be on autopilot, where there wasn't very much thinking about notes or time signatures or anything like that. It was just three super angry people getting up on stage and letting it out all at one time. And they were wild. It was some definitely wild times in playing music. You know, there was a lot of hospital visits from getting injured, just crazy things all the time. Just so many, like, now today, fond memories, but just trials of just trying to be an underground band and with no money, and trying to travel around and tour in a little old minivan, and not really knowing what we're doing, giving our merch away, while all the other bands are selling it. We're thinking the merch is just promotional materials because we love our fans, and we're happy that they came out. And but it was a really special time. We I feel like in Nashville, in some ways, we only really had each other. The music scene, though it had a really strong underground scene, we were sort of the weirdos a little bit. And so it was just the three of us most of the time.
Yeah. You obviously today is the day has got such a long history. You got all these different releases. You've played with a lot of different people, and every single album, all the different players that you've had have all brought fantastic playing and energy to the band. One of the things that thinking about the latest record, one of the things that always impresses me with Today is the Day is that even though I've listened to all of your music so much, I never know what I'm going to get the next time around. And Never Give In is no different in that respect. I was surprised and delighted when I started listening to it. I was like, okay, there are certain kind of like motifs that I sort of expect from you. Like, I don't really know exactly how you would characterize it, but I feel like you've got a certain guitar style that's a kind of like your sort of arpeggios are very distinctive. It's almost like a kind of a King Crimson reminiscent sort of effect. But one of the things, as much as I love that, one of the things I appreciate with Never Give In is that that doesn't actually come in until about 3 tracks, I think, into the album in a intentional psychological warfare. Like the first 2 tracks are very brooding. They're kind of understated. But you got all these amazing textures going on, like with the electronics and the Moog and everything as well, like that. So yeah, I was delighted and fascinated with like the fact that yet again I'm like, oh, I think I know this band, but this is like a new face that I've never seen before.
Yeah, every time I go to create something, whether it's music for today's day or really anything in life, um, I feel like my job is to bring about something brand new that you've never heard before. And that's why, like, all the Today is the Day albums are very different from one another, sometimes very drastically different from one to the next and whatnot. And it isn't like an intention of just being different, it's more like an intention of being real, because we all change, and we all have different moments in life and different chapters of how we feel, and that gets interpreted through sound and notes and music and movements. So this album, like the others that I've made, like I didn't want to hold back about expansiveness about the way the music would be approached, because to me the album Never Give In is and I know everybody's heard this many times, but it's a whole piece of something where, so many times, especially like say if there are signature things about a band, people will run that right up to the front so that everybody does immediately get the message of like, oh, okay, yeah, I just took a drink of this is Coca-Cola. Yeah, that's exactly the way it's supposed to taste. Um, and for me, about dynamics of an album, it's important to lay like the foundation of the record in a way where, as the story's being told, it's okay to fall on to those normal concepts or normal ways that you play, if that is a real genuine thing that you're feeling. But I feel it's a little bit more daring to go ahead and accept reality, that this is how you feel and this is what you're thinking and this is what paints the picture of the whole album, which is a collection of chapters to it, And I love all facets of music. And I think that like for me, another thing too, like just like with the lyrics of this album, more than ever these days in our day and age of Pro Tools and digital and copy pasting and putting records together in a computer type way, everything real thought out, precise, calculated. I wanted to make this record as stream of thought and stream of conscious as it could be. So like song one is like this, and then song two is like this, and three, and the words, I made a deal with myself when I wrote the lyrics to this. You want complete honesty. So like let's not go back and rethink these words. Like when you think it and you feel it and it fits the part of the song, then write that down and don't diminish the honesty in it, because in real life, you don't really get a chance. Like you're having a conversation and you say what comes to the top of your head, so you don't like constantly edit and re-edit like what you said. But a lot of the things that we're exposed to, films and music, are edited and re-edited and thought over again, to where the original feeling and the original idea that you had in the first place gets morphed into something else. And so I thought if I was going to make a record that's kind of like a diary of a human experience, then the best way that I could just do that is to not judge myself about the content of what I'm saying, but to safeguard and make sure that if I feel this and it fits the part of the song, then I'm writing it down and it stays that way. And then the next line and the next line. And sure, sometimes, some of the lines that I'd make up at first, when I would think them and write them down, they wouldn't make sense. And I'd be like, what the fuck is this supposed to mean? But then it's funny because when you do it like this and you just let the pen flow and write the song, then at a later time, you'll come back and look at that whole piece and then start to understand the imagery in the picture that you're trying to paint. And if you're, I think if you're doing it well, just everything just shouldn't be so obvious to you right up front. It might be something that maybe challenges your stream of thought and like the way that you think about things, for you to formulate your own opinion about like what's going on with this. So I definitely can say that every single word and every single musical part on this new album was made like that, where it's like we're not sitting here thinking about how much money we can make or how cool we can be or popular or any other thing like that. It's more like a commitment to honesty in music.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely comes through in the record. But hearing you talk about that, I kind of feel to go through the process with that kind of determination of I'm going to accept the things that are coming out of me, that must be quite a vulnerable experience. And it must take quite a lot of determination to go like, I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm going to allow these things to continue to exist.
It is. It's very hard because I have a perfectionist streak in me too that's really, really out of control, where it's difficult for me to relinquish works because I never feel like anything I do is good enough for myself or really for anybody else. And I'm always just feeling inferior, and that just that it's not good enough. And so then when I that's part of why I think I adopted this mindset even more so in recent years, because it's like, you are who you are, and you think the things that you think, right or wrong. And when people admire some of the greats like Jimi Hendrix or Miles Davis or whoever, they're not admiring those guys for trying to fit in or trying to be the cool guy or whatever else like that. And it happens to be that, people love Miles Davis and they happen to love Jimi Hendrix, but they just as equally could not have liked them for not fitting in and not really being what you would expect out of a musician or player. And so I just yeah, I definitely I definitely have a hard time with it because I always just want to give my best and make people feel the emotion as deeply as possible. I worry when I'm making stuff that, like, is this the very best I can do? But to me, as a manager of my own art, it's like, listen, what is the best? What is the best that meaning the best thing that you can do for somebody is to have unfiltered entertainment where they're listening to something as a story or a song, and they're knowing that this isn't a bunch of bullshit that's contrived, that it's more like something that somebody is truly feeling, and sharing that with, say, a stranger or a fan or a friend that's listening to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is part of what is so powerful about Today is the Day is the fact that it never feels contrived. And it's like, however intense or distressing or traumatic the music is, it's always like, well, this is an authentic representation of a particular experience and feeling. And so it's like you kind of get yeah, you just kind of you get sort of swept in the wave of that expression.
Yeah, it's crazy. And for me, when once the stuff is created, as a fan of Today is the Day myself, I get swept away in it, especially live and whatnot. A musical set by us is like one blasting wave of emotion starting off from the beginning that carries through all kinds of feelings. And I have no problem being uninhibited and letting it go, warts and all of whatever's going, because again, it's part of my heart. It's something I feel and love and admire. And the people that care about it are so dear to me in a world of a lot of frustration and hurting and pain and trying to find a way. I'm doing the same exact thing. And I feel like that for anybody to relate to me, the only way that they'll ever be able to do it is if I just be myself. And so I just gotta, give my very best to what's going on and let it flow through me, because when I do that, it becomes an experience. And that's what I'm shooting for, kind of like the way that the word experience was used with, say, Jimi Hendrix shows or something. There's a point where it's not notes and chords and words. There's a air that's a air of electricity going on and vibe where every time doesn't matter, and it's a moment of something happening. And I think that in a world where, again, everything is so prepared statement and controlled, and people playing um the majority of the music off of a computer or whatever, and not even really performing the songs, there's a spontaneity where anything could go wrong, anything could go right. Who knows what's going to happen next that I think we all miss in music a lot these days because the whole musical thing has turned into such a hard thing to do that capitalism about the making the money on it and every other thing is such a huge driving factor for so many people. And I have the lucky but unlucky part about this of just knowing it's like this is music that's not necessarily made for mass consumption. And the people that do follow it are there and they're deeply devoted did people pushing you all the time, then that enables you to make a record like Never Give In. And that's probably the most proudest thing I am about these records and whatnot is that like I see the way this whole thing has changed in the last 30 something years that I started doing this. And I'd go on record to say, and people could take it as bragging, and I guess I am bragging, is that if you want underground and for what that means of integrity and true to the music and whatnot, this is about the most DIY, do it yourself experience that you're going to get because there are no money minded people involved in any of the process of this. No one tells me what to do about the musical direction or when deadlines about like this and that and everything. And so when you get a new Today's the Day album, it was truly done on the terms of the artist making it. And for better or worse, at least you know you're getting something that was homemade and out in a way that's for the sake of the art rather than the sake of the dollar.
Yeah. Oh, that definitely comes through. Thinking about the players that you have on the latest record. So you brought in Colin Frecknell and Tom Jack. Tell me about those guys, like, and how they came to be part of the band.
They've been awesome. You know, around 2000, around 2020, right before COVID had hit, Tom came on board to do bass with me and toured with me on the No Good to Anyone tour with a drummer that's an amazing drummer named Vishnu Reddy. And Vishnu, when the pandemic hit, he had to go back to India because his visa from where he had been going to school at Berkeley School of Music in Boston, he had to go back. And his best friend at the time was Colin Frecknell, and he and Colin both attended Berkeley. And I ended up recording some music of Collins at my studio. And when I saw him play drums, I was like, wow, like, you know, this guy is like super, super gifted and talented, like Vishnu, of being schooled and unconventional drumming. And so basically, Colin got on board with us in around the end of 2020. And you know, during those years of between 2020 and 2024, this songwriting continued on a lot. I wrote like, I think almost 20 something songs. It was like an hour and 40 minutes or something like that. It was a lot of music. And so Colin and Tom would come into town and cut their parts and whatnot. And I'm really, really thankful to have them with us on this. We also, another like really, really great collaboration came about through my friend Dave Brenner from Grid Failure and Mac Golahan. Those guys for the song Secret Police like added like this otherworldly dimension with these far out like wretched insane nightmarish screams with effects and like synths and so forth that provide like this psychedelic ambience from Dave's end of things. And then Mac, who he's played on like Let's Dance by David Bowie and like all kinds of like really amazing artists. He loves Today's Today and wanted to contribute tracks to it as well. And so he got in there and laid down some just pure gold like trumpet work and whatnot to this song, to where it's one, to me it's one of the most inventive songs on the album, just because of the mashup of what do you get when you have a Miles Davis level trumpet player with like this extreme artist like on synths and vocals, Dave Brenner, and so yeah, it was really nice to have like such a caliber of musicians to work with on Never Give In.
Yeah, I love the horns on Secret Police. They do have this feel that is just something like kind of, yeah, totally sort of alien, otherworldly. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, you don't really hear it. It almost takes the song in a different kind of way, a more modern kind of way, into some AMREP territory in a lot of ways. It reminds me of some of the kookiness of like certain like eclectic songs from back during the early noise days and whatnot, where
You mean bands like
odd,
Cows, something like that?
yeah, like odd elements of or instruments were put into hardcore songs or metal songs or noisy songs, and but it just all like, it's all there to like again just hopefully like create something brand new, so that it makes you want to check it out, to try to figure it out, like what is going on with this trumpet part going, and then it sounds like someone's being like torn apart in the background though with like vocals, and you don't really get that combination a lot of times.
Yeah, absolutely. No, for sure. Like as I listen through the album repeatedly, it's like there are all these really cool textures and different interplay that's going on that I feel like is going to keep revealing itself the more I listen to it. There's another particular track that I wanted to talk about a bit. I Got Nothing, which is like I love how it's so kind of earwormy and infectious. Like you've got this very kind of hypnotic beat and this almost like a kind of a mantra. And I don't know if it's the Moog specifically or other electronics, but you've got this kind of like stabbing effect going on in
It's
the
a
background.
move
The
doing
Moog,
it,
and it
yeah.
feels like it's like slightly slower than the beat. So it's like it's just always slightly going out of time. And I love that effect. Am I right?
It is on purpose like that. Yeah, the sequence that's doing that is slightly timed off of it, where it'll go on and off and on. And I did that in the studio when I was messing with it, and when I put it on, it didn't sound cool anymore. Like when I put it where it would lock right on to the, because then it kind of brought it more into like a techno realm or something, or where it's perfectly like that. But then with it way it is, it causes you to have this uneasy feeling like you're falling off of something, or like just when you think you're going straight ahead, all of a sudden you trip over like a rock or something like that. It's got this stumbling kind of effect that goes about it. And yeah, I like that song. That was one of the first ones that I made for the record, and the idea with that one was to, it seemed like that we were all inside of this kind of like bizarre digital machine going on, because the outside world had been cut off as far as you going out into the world. So everything that we were hearing and seeing and experiencing was coming through a screen, like in a technology kind of way. And life had went from a first person in person thing to an absolutely cold and isolated kind of thing. And when you think about those words of like, well, how can I explain that or paint a picture of that in music? For me, it was like, it's electronic, like that, like taking electronic tools and combining them with heavy metal type guitars, and more on a scary or spooky kind of vocals, almost as if a person's trapped somewhere or trapped in a small room or something. And so but yeah, no, that that song is one that's very different than the rest of the album. But again, when I made it up, I kind of thought after I did it, I'm like, well, some people would probably be like, so what is going on here? Like, it's like, or are we going off into a techno realm or something like that? But no, it was more like just tools to get the job done of like painting that uneasy feeling of not knowing what's going on and the miserable existence of being where you can't truly talk to somebody in person about something. Everything is just behind this digital veil.
Yeah. No, I feel the atmosphere of that track for sure. Something that I want to ask you, I don't know if I've really heard you talk about this much in interviews, but thinking about the Today is the Day records from one to the next, for me, it's not just a matter of your music that you're creating changing each time around. I feel like you make very different kind of production choices from one record to the next. It's like to go from Temple of the Morning Star to In the Eyes of God, Sadness Will Prevail, Kiss the Pig. Like they all sound so different from a production point of view. And then, continuing on with every album you've done since. I was kind of curious to know, do you have like kind of particular go-tos in terms of like the way that you record, like whether it's to do with kind of like microphone setup or particular kind of techniques? Like how kind of set are you with certain techniques versus you going, right, I'm going to throw everything out the window and just kind of like start from scratch from one record to the next?
Um, I record it's kind of two different things. The recording part is very much in the old school way for the best way to describe it, meaning like all the mic preamps and mics and everything like that is like vintage stuff that's like really old from like the late 60s and 1970s, like Neve preamps and API preamps, Neumann microphones. Um, a big emphasis on the analog side of things because for me, out of the history of music and so forth, the golden age of audio production was like somewhere around the mid 1990s and whatnot. The analog evolution had kind of reached its pinnacle and peak, and all of the equipment that you would record and make records with, like Neves, APIs, Neumanns, um, ribbon microphones, all these older primitive tools and whatnot that had gotten to just like a peak of golden age. And so where this comes from about the end result of the production a lot of times is more like in the mixing down of the album and the way it's supposed to be. Now, depending on how far I've went with the analog part of it, like creating my own reverbs for vocals, like meaning you'll have a vocal mic like right in front of your face, but then you have another one that's like about 10 feet away. And the idea is to grab the ambience of the room instead of like using a processed reverb or something. But then, a lot of times, like honestly, in most productions, one of the key instruments that dictates sort of the way a record sounds is the drums. And, so like if you think about like No Good to Anyone, I used a blending of like analog tones of drums with sampled tones that I had to create like more of like a mechanistic kind of drum sound on that. But then like on Never Give In, I went for full analog with no sampling of any kind. And in fact, the only album that I've ever involved samples in when it comes to drums is No Good to Anyone. But I did that on purpose because of the drums being a really larger than life kind of very in your face kind of thing all the time. And so by using a hybrid approach with that, I was able to do that with that. But in general, I don't like using samples and I like you going for more like room sounds and analog stuff. But then in the production, you can take that in many, many different directions. You can make things sound more metal, or you can make them sound more rock or whatever, depending on the way you EQ things, the way you want it to come across. And, some of the earlier albums, though, some of the production was dictated by limitations of things because, a lot of folks may not realize it, but like, say, for instance, like self-titled and Temple of the Morning Star, you're talking about three, well, for self-titled, two ADAT machines, Temple, three ADAT machines, which were these digital recorders that ran on these tapes that looked like VHS tapes. And then for equipment, we're talking stuff that anybody right now that plays music, whether they're signed or not signed or on like SM57s, very modest, cheap gear like DBX compressors, very consumer grade level of gear, very inexpensive microphones that cost $50, $75 or whatever, because that's all I had. So like Temple of the Morning Star, its sound, a lot of that had to do with like this board that was called a Soundcraft Ghost that had English EQs in it and so forth. And I exploited the sub frequencies that that board would do with that. That board wasn't, though, like a really big pro level like board because I had just opened my studio around 1996 um, in Nashville with this modest gear, and then as time progressed and I was able to get bigger recordings with other bands and then take some of the money from recording them and then putting it back into the gear that I really wanted to have, it opened me up to being able to do big with audio and so forth. But a lot of today is the day, but when you've only got what you got to like make the best thing that you can. And thankfully those records worked out really cool, even though there wasn't very much money or equipment involved in them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess, it goes back to the principle of the necessity is the mother of invention. So it's like if you've got a creative spirit, you will use what you've got to create something artistic. I'm kind of fascinated now that you've brought up this point of some of what you've done coming out of necessity from a sort of a geekish point of view. I'm interested to ask you a little question about Kiss the Pig, because Kiss the Pig is one of my favorite Today is the Day records. And I feel like it's one of the harshest sounding records. So now I'm curious to know, like, when you made that, in terms of the way that record sounds, how much was that actually like you adapting to the limitations versus you saying, I want this to sound like as grim and noisy and abrasive as possible?
It was the second one. I want it to sound like that because that recording, by that time, the studio had beefed up like quite a bit. I had a Studer 2-inch tape machine and a Studer quarter-inch mix down deck, probably about 5 full racks of gear and whatnot by that time. This was after recording Lamb of God and a bunch of other bands Converge, and so like we had really almost no limitation of, I mean, the you walking into my studio during those years was no different than walking into Electric Ladyland or like Ocean Way Studios or something, meaning Studer, Neve, Yuri, AP, all this stuff, like the high end of audio. But it's like about a philosophy, though, meaning like when I did Kiss the Pig, like you were saying about how one goes from the other, and then I was saying I don't like to repeat the same trick twice of whatever it was that I did. If you look at that quad of Relapse albums, Temple of the Morning Star was sort of like a super heavy experimental noise adventure. And so there's a lot of like subsonic low, and there was an element almost of like an analog industrial thing going on with that. And then right after we got through doing that, I thought about music a lot. about just what was going on at the time, what wasn't going on at the time, what was I not hearing that I wish I could hear. And I dived off into this huge thing of tripping out on Slayer and a lot of like speed metal and earache music and so forth. And by this time, oddly enough, 1999, a few things going. One, I felt like that wasn't as cool anymore because it had been going on through the late 80s through the early 90s, and you weren't really hearing bands trying to like break new ground with speed metal and things like that at the time. And so I set out doing that one with like, let's try to like open a new chapter in music of using noise and metal with like speed metal type ideology or whatever behind it. And then right after that, not wanting to, just go and retread it again, I with Sadness Will Prevail felt more like maybe it would be clear. And so the production for it was like really dirty and heavy, almost like some of the production on early black metal albums and things like that, where it's not supposed to be pristine, perfect. Like it's supposed to be really gnarly and dirty and nasty to kind of get the message across about what the album's about. And then right after making that slow, murky, dirty thing, I got fascinated with grind a lot, and just grinding, period. And I was like, sort of like, well, we dabbled in the speed metal realm. What if we like up the ante and like take it to like real hyper fast grinding elements like with the Today Is the Day sound. And Mike Roswag was a brutal grinder. I mean, he could grind and play shit that like it just to me seems so much more raw and intense than a lot of the other say bands that dabbled in grind at the time, with the way he played. And so it fit perfect with these unconventional chordal structures and music and writing that was on the Kiss the Pig album. You know, that album is a really, really fucked off album. And I mean, if you think about the time period of when that was made, that was like it was really made about, it's the writing of it started about 1 year after 9/11 and the Iraq war starting. And so there was this like just pissed off shit going on about just the way everything is going, almost like the government had gotten out of control. We're in wars that don't make any sense. We're talking about weapons of mass destruction that don't even exist. We've got people dying in buildings, getting collapsed to the ground. We have a sense of general fear and terror going on because the media ramping it up so much all the time, acting as if when you go to the gas pump, someone's gonna do a suicide bomb right there or something. And so, I was definitely feeling that too as a person just trying to find my way through life. I had gotten married within the few years prior to this and just had my first kid like in 2001, only a few months before 9/11. And so his whole birth and being alive was like right when all this stuff was going on. So if you could imagine trying to raise a child and you're presenting a world that is safe and loving to them when everything around you is be scared, something's going to get you, someone's going to get you, um it was just like, I'm sick of this shit. It's like I've got to get this out of me. And so like all that stuff is just really bare knuckle, hardcore type of feelings being pummeled out through grind beats and double bass and.
Well, yeah, I mean, I fucking love it.
Oh, thanks,
I
buddy.
love the
Yeah, no, I
I
was
love the
really proud of
expression.
that album. It's sonically, it's funny because everything, music is like, I think time and place, the right time, the right place and everything. And where I'm always doing something different, it might not fit in exactly at that minute or whatever. And I think when that record came out, it was so hateful and insane and crazy that but yet it had that blending of the noisiness to it where your straight up grind freaks might be like, what's going on with this or whatever. Like it's not just all guttural low vocals and whatnot, or not all streamlined like distorted guitar sounds. They're more like exploding kind of sounds. And then you go back years after and listen to that, and in a lot of ways, it is just like a really big fist knocking some teeth out. Like it's a really, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it because it's something that I've been a part of making, but I think for what that record is, if you like things that are off kilter that involve speed metal and grind and whatnot like that, that record is really fucked up and cool in a way.
For sure, man. And I think like this is a thing that I've thought to myself and I've said to other people about why I like Today Is the Day so much is that it's like I feel like from one record to the next you'll defy expectations. So it's like I love Temple of the Morning Star, I love the sound of it, but then I love the fact that where you went next with In the Eyes of God was different. And Sadness Will Prevail is possibly my favorite album that you've done, and that's completely different. And then Kiss the Pig is just again in a completely different direction again. So I just love the fact that it's like there's no sort of going like, oh, people liked this, I'm going to do more of this. It's like, no, 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 this is what I'm going to do at this particular point.
There was a pivotal moment in the history of doing this that I think set the stage, and it's one of my most important moves I made that I'm most proud of. And I've told my sons this too, about just a philosophy about things of what I feel is like important when you go about doing things like this, was that early on down in Nashville when we made the How to Win Friends and Influence People demo, we were naive about anything to do with anything about the music business. We knew absolutely nothing about it other than what we'd seen in movies or stuff like that. A movie about somebody famous that was on the Doors or whoever on a record label or something. We didn't know anything about any of that stuff. It only seemed to us like on a real primitive level, like you make a demo, you mail it out, somebody might like it. When they like it, they like what you do, and then they want you to record it and they want you to put it out. And then this is how it all works. And I found out really quick when we sent that demo out, because like for the first 3 months that cassette had been sent out, there was nothing but passes on it of like Caroline Records, thank you very much for sending this, but we're all good right now. And after about 3 months, four things happened, starting with a letter from Jello Biafra to me where I had sent him the record at Alternative Tentacles, and he didn't have the ability to put it out at the time and felt woeful about it. And then, but then wrote this handwritten letter to me explaining how important the music was, and that for no reason to not stop doing this because you're on to something and I want to see this happen. And so that blew my mind because I was just a kid living in a warehouse. I couldn't believe that one of my heroes about not only music, but about free speech and art, most importantly, wrote me and showed that kind of admiration. I didn't even care that Alternative Tentacles couldn't sign us at the time. It just his approval of it made me really happy. And then within about a 2 or 3 week span of time, we got letters from Earache, TVT, and AMREP, and they all were way receptive and wanting to sign the band. So suddenly we had like three different offers. TVT at the time had just put out Head Like a Hole by Nine Inch Nails. And I really love that album. I saw them on that album and it blew my mind. And so that they were a contender. And then with AMREP, everybody in the band loved Helmet, the Melvins, Boss Hog, all these cool AMREP bands and whatnot. And so that was a contender. And then, like a dream come true, the other spectrum that we were way into, which was Earache, they wrote and said the same thing of wanting to check this out and let's get this going. And so we were like on top of the world thinking like, oh my God, like we had 3 months of people saying no, and and then all of a sudden now, like, our hero labels, the ones that we really look up to, wrote us back and want to do more. And so the first thing we did was we went up to CBGB's in New York City. And again, your fantasies are always different than reality. We're the kids from Tennessee, we're going to CBGB's in New York to play this showcase show for Earache Records. Oh my God. And we're expecting, to go there, this legendary club. There's going to be all kinds of people and it's going to be crazy. And we get there and there were like six dudes. It was the dude from Earache, John Viederhorn, oddly enough, this famous music writer. And I want to say the other four people were also something like that. And so it was very odd. It kind of freaked us out at first when we went there. It's like, wow, it was a Sunday matinee at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so we went crazy. I thought the show went perfect. I had ran into a wall on the very first note of that set, busting my ear into the wall, and blood was coming out of my ear. And I did something else where my pant leg got hooked on something and it ripped my outer seam of my pants all the way from my hip down to my foot. So I had this bizarre pant leg like hanging off of me or whatever with my bare naked leg. And like it was, I was real satisfied with that. And we got through, and I'm thinking like, man, if we want to do this earache thing, I think it'll be in the bag because we killed it. And so I talked to the guy from Earache, and he's like, okay, when you get back home, I can fill you in and all this stuff. And I got back home, and the first thing right off the bat was the way the band is. Like, now you got this How to Win Friends and Influence People demo, and then you got this 7-inch no, it was actually a cassette of I Been Scared and Come On Down and Get Saved that I had recorded. And the production values on those two different things were very different. Like the How to Win Friends and Influence People was on purpose industrial sounding with the drums to be mechanistic sounding. And then the cassette was super and basically saying like, well, if we were going to work with you, like, we would want you to sound like the How to Win Friends and Influence People thing instead of this other thing and this organic thing. And that hit me really weird because I thought, like, how the fuck are we going to be able to make something brand new and different if before we've even released a regular album on a label, you've got it in your head that, oh, okay, you guys are the industrial guys. That's the way you need to be. That's your angle. You can't be uh uh Jesus Lizard or Shellac or like whatever kind of analog sounding thing if you wanted, or some other thing. We've got it. We know what's best for you. And so we paused on that, and it was really disappointing because I was just like, this is crazy, man. That's like a dream come true. And I can't believe that these dudes want to basically tell us what to do. And so when we had our next meeting about something like this was the AMREP one, and I said to the guys in the band, I was like, okay, we're about to walk across the street to the convenience store. There's a payphone on the wall. I'm gonna put some quarters in this thing. I'm gonna call Tom Hazelmeyer at AMREP, but I'm gonna let him know what is up before we even go any further. And you have to keep in mind with me saying that like that, I am nobody. I am 25 years old, the brokest person on planet Earth, eating packages of 50-cent hot dogs at this little convenience store. I have literally no ground to stand on. But when I called AMREP and asked to speak to him, they put him on the phone. He was probably shocked at first because instead of a cordial like hi, how's it going? It's Tom Hazelmeyer, AMREP. Hi, Tom. My name's Steve. I'm from Today is the Day. Hey, buddy, you got a great label. Blah blah blah. You know, it's like he literally answered the phone and was like Tom Hazelmeyer, and I was like, Tom, yeah, hi, it's Steve. I'm from Today's the Day. Now, check this out. I got your letter here, and you wrote me saying that you're into this. Now, I just want to get a few things out of the way before we even talk one more second. If you were to work with us, we are in control of the sound, the audio, the art, the music, the lyrics, the imagery, every element that has anything to do with art. We are 100% in control of that, and you would not be able to say anything at all about anything that we do. And if you ain't good with that, then we ain't got nothing else to talk about. And I was expecting, after a short pause where he didn't say anything, for him to be like, cool, well then go fuck yourself, like, you know. And instead he came back with, bub, I don't care what you do. If you want to record a fucking faucet dripping and it somehow means something or is cool, then that's fine with me. I don't give a fuck. And I was like, well, then I guess we can talk about some more stuff then. And that moment, right that second, is exactly what enabled and created Today is the Day to be what it is today. Because a lot of people in chasing money would have been more than happy to laugh at all the right jokes, dance around for whoever in whatever way they want them to dance, do whatever they want, just as long as they can get the record deal. And we were willing to put it on the line of we would rather have no record deal than for this great idea to get ruined. And the great idea being musical freedom, the ability to take music, tear it apart, put it back together in different ways and put it out there. And then if after doing that one, you have a feeling that it needs to be this other way, then you can just do it that way or do it this way. And I told, you know, like I said, I tell my sons that when it comes to like creativity and art and stuff like that, it's like you cannot let business people dictate like the things that you make when you are the creator of the art or whatever, because if you do, then the original idea of what it is never going to be able to come to fruition, because there's always going to be boundaries around it of things that you're not allowed to do or whatever. And you know, so in exploiting that, once we had that freedom like that, that's what I mean about that's what enabled being able to make albums like SuperNova, Willpower, Temple of the Morning Star, In the Eyes of God, all those things, is because I had it straight with everybody. hey, if you like me, then trust me, I'm going to make the very best thing that I can make. I will never play ball with you about giving you some kind of product or something like that that's expected. And the last thing in this long winded thing that I'll say about it that proves that I was right is that when I made Temple of the Morning Star, getting on a label like Relapse, and again, you have to remember time period. This is the beginning of Relapse. This is not years into it. This is when they went from an apartment putting records together to where they had just got a building to put this into, and we're just now starting to do it. Neurosis had just got signed to it. It's like the majority of the bands that were on Relapse at the time were very extreme type of like Mortician and things that are just crazy brutal death metal grind. And so when I made Temple of the Morning Star, the guys who own the label, they absolutely got it. Several other people, I think, did not get it, of understanding like the connection of why do you guys want this band on this label? Because these dudes are not like straight up Meshuggah or some other heavy band. This is some really weird shit. And one dude in particular was like, I think they had like a vote or something where they had 17 people now working, and 16 all gave the thumbs up. And the one dude said, I don't like this shit. And so to fast forward through this, Tempo comes out. It winds up being the #8 metal album of the year on Terrorizer magazine and all kinds of other things. Tours with Melvins, Napalm Death, all kinds of crazy things, really amazing, great things coming from it. And so it's round two time to make album #2 for Relapse, which was In the Eyes of God. And I will never fucking forget me turning in the eyes of God, and then the report back, say, from that dude being, well, this isn't like Temple of the Morning Star. And it's like, ah ha ha, motherfucker. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Is I gave you Temple of the Morning Star, and you looked at me as if I'm fucking nuts. And then it comes out, people admire and love and care about it in a big way. And then when I come back and do something progressed from that that's different, now you want me to make another Temple of the Morning Star back to back like that. And I think that shit happens in music all the time, where you have just a little bit of success with some angle of something. And then for that moment forward, all the business people want you to clone yourself and keep making exactly the same thing, which is not an honest, true artistic expression. And that doesn't fall within my wheelhouse, because I cannot do stuff like that. I look at this shit as just like making movies. It's always been to me linked to like the idea of making movies. And you look at like Quentin Tarantino movies from the 90s, one moment it's Reservoir Dogs and guys in a building that are all dressed in the same outfits. The next moment it's some bizarre tale of a boxer and drug kingpin, and then the next one is an old west thing or something. And it's like the idea is to take you somewhere you've never been before. So if you can't have artistic freedom to create those things, then how are people ever going to get like the quality of true human emotion or something like that? It just seems like you're role playing or being phony or fake or something like that. So And by the way, it isn't like it's the greatest thing for you if you are hugely into selling records or something like that. I'll be the first to admit it of owning a record label. I could see it be absolutely fucking frustrating because if you invent a product and it's really amazing, like you're the first guy to invent a portable vacuum for your car that'll fit inside your pocket, and then the next thing that you invent is a new kind of like lawnmower or something. It has nothing to do with the other thing. You can't really rely on the audience that bought the portable vacuum because I get that, but I think we need to, when it comes to art and music, care less about numbers and more about quality and trueness of like what somebody is really saying or doing.
Steve, I love it. It's a great story. It's a great insight and yeah, inspiring as well. I'm going to let you go, but I just wanted to ask you one last question. Thinking about the release of Never Give In, I know you've got some shows lined up. I think you're going to be playing with Primitive Man, who I fucking love as well. What have you got lined up in shows? And is there a possibility that we'll see you in Europe promoting yourself?
I'm really psyched. We're going to be hitting the road in the middle of November on a headlining trek from Maine out to Los Angeles, which will then start the Primitive Man portion of the tour. And I've been a huge fan of them ever since they started. Played shows with Ethan and Primitive Man and been absolutely blown away by their 1 million pound ton of corrosive heavy metal coming down on my head and chest when I watch them play. And I just did a tour a month ago with Ethan with his project called Spiritual Poisoning, and it was so great to get to hang out with him, catch back up with him. And so we're going to be on that tour from mid-November all the way till I believe December 21st or 22nd, right before. So it's a lot of shows. I believe it's close to 35, 38 shows or something like that. And then as far as Europe goes, our agent's been in contact with us about this during festival season and so I'm hoping to be able to come over during that time. I believe Roadburn is in the cards for this next year in Europe and so forth. I miss being there because I've had some really amazing times and miss my European brothers and sisters. So hopefully we'll get to be out there like in spring of 2026.
Sounds great. Well, Steve, thank you again so much for your time. Thank you for the music. It's always great to talk to you. And yeah, I love what you do. You're an inspiration. So yeah, I just keep being yourself and keep doing what you do.
Well, thank you, Tom, man. I appreciate it. And I appreciate every single person who's been part of the Today is the Day experience. I consider you and everybody else part of the band because we're all in Today is the Day in a lot of ways. And I'll never ever stop doing it about trying to make hopefully some things that we can try to figure out this whole existence about. So
I love it and I feel it. Steve, thank you so much. Until next time. All
well,
the
thank
best.
you, Tom. Have a great day and all my love to Ghost Cult. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.